Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 34 of the single player Let's Play series. So today I've got a couple of big plans. I think most of them are going to be fluid related though, and I think that's going to make things pretty dang interesting. My mob collection over here is definitely getting a little bit large. Might have to start calling a couple of entities, we'll see. But most certainly making some good progress in this world. I have made a little bit of progress off camera as well. I try not to do too much off camera, but I did AFK in this world for just a tiny little bit to make sure that everything with the biodiesel generation was working correctly. And I did run into an issue, so I wanted to kind of go over that really quickly. We have so many crops, and if you think about a Minecraft player and how much food they eat, I think it's a reasonable expectation to say that a Minecraft player will not eat something with 5.5 hunger haunches and what looks to be about 8.5 saturation haunches of food more than about 2,000 times. I would say that's a safe bet. Well, we've got 5,000 tomatoes and 5,000 onions, and we've got tons of cabbage, and we're running low. Unfortunately, we're running very low on sugarcane. So as such, stay inside, my friend, stay inside. Right, we did have an update as well. I forgot about this. We had an update to chunk loaders, so we don't need to do that anymore. So I have taken over most of our garden cloches with sugarcane because we were running out of sugarcane. At this point, we have excess, which is good, but if we ever need to constantly run our diesel generator, then we're going to run into issues because I currently have set up a shutoff system that runs automatically, and I wanted to show you that as well. And that's why we have an excess of sugarcane. But if I didn't do that, then we probably wouldn't actually have any excess of sugarcane whatsoever. So I have put together a little bit of a barrier to keep me from walking into the spicy wires for now. And if we take a look in here, I don't know why it's not rendering. I've seen it work before. But if we take a look in here, you'll see that there is a redstone link here. And so this redstone link has the biofuel buckets on it. And if I just hop underneath here really quickly, this should not take too terribly long, we can see the setup that I've done here. And this is a really cool little setup. So if here we go. This is where I wanted to be. If I get out my screwdriver from Immersive Engineering, you can see I have made one of these redstone probe connectors. So a redstone probe connector, pretty straightforward to make here. It's one of these electronic components, and then two of any stained glass, or glass pane, and then a redstone wire connector. It will do basically the same thing as a comparator output, but you can set a threshold for the comparator output. So if I look here, I've set it so that it only emits a threshold when the threshold is at or below 12. So that means that this is, if you think about it, right, this is not my first, but my second capacitor. There's one more capacitor on top of this one. So if this one starts to drain, that means the top one is already foregone because it's trying to refill all the ones below it. So if this one starts to drain, that means we're at a net negative in our energy, and we need to kick on our diesel generator. So I have it running here so that anytime it is, I'm sorry, I said below, anytime it is above 12, it will emit a redstone signal, which means it will shut off our diesel generator because we don't need the diesel generator running all the time, so why run it all the time? So yeah, that is the biggest thing that I've done in between episodes, really, was just getting that set up. And aside from that, there's not really much else that I've done. I've been trying to keep things pretty simple and restrictive to on-camera work only. But in this episode, I do have some plans for getting together some fluid maintenance and doing some fluid stuff, because we haven't really done a lot of fluid stuff. And I think it'd be kind of interesting if we did finally get around to it. We've got this big old tank over here that we don't really do anything with. And so I have some thoughts and ideas on that. But anyways, let me go ahead and get a couple things ready. One of the things that we need to get ready, right, and I did move my grids. I've been having some issues with the covers, as you know, so I moved my crafting and my crafter manager grids over here. So my pattern grid is over here now. So let's take a look at fluid drives. Come on. Deselect that box, please. There we go. So let's take a look at some of the fluid storage. So I'm thinking for us, we're probably just going to go with something really simple, like a 4096 fluid. That's the biggest one. In refined storage itself, reborn storage adds even bigger tiers. I don't think we need any of that. That's really excessive. So we can go ahead and start working our way down here. We're clearly going to need to teach you how to make a bucket. And what we're going to do today, my goal, is to go ahead and get everything crafted up in such a way that we can start to store our refined storage, our fluids in refined storage itself. I think that'd be really enjoyable, really fun. So we will just take these guys down here to the refined storage section. I may actually move you and do this like so. Put a bucket right there. And we can go ahead and start to craft up our fluid storage part. And I'm also going to need a fluid grid. One of these guys is pretty straightforward to make, but is going to take lowest priority here as far as the crafting recipe goes. So I'm just going to keep an eye on our crafts over here with the crafter manager, and I will be back when everything is done. Alright, so now we have our fluid drive all crafted up here. Let's go and take that and encapsulate it really quickly into a casing. That should hopefully not take too long to get that glass ready. And we should also have our fluid grid good to go, so we can go ahead and get that in the works. Go ahead and get... it seems as though a bucket was consumed here. No worries, no worries. Alright, so fluid. We'll do that. And there we are. So that is fluid management. Not only is that a quest, but it's also an important thing that we can do that I hadn't really shown off yet. So of course we're going to put our fluid drive in here. That's going to make it look like we have a lot more space than we actually do. Not to worry though. And so now, if I grab our little fluid grid here and put that somewhere as well, and I'm starting to think that maybe you're going to get moved. Put you there. And then, of course, that is a fluid drive. So our items are not going to show up there at all, ever. So that is one thing to keep in mind. I don't know if that's going to be a concern for many, but unlike some mods or older versions as well of refined storage, the fluid grid is going to work independently of the sort by name. It's going to work independently as far as showing your items from your item grid. And that, I think, is totally fine. So there are a couple of things that we can do with this. Of course, I think the most obvious one tends to be to just use something like an external storage as well, instead of using your disk drive, which is something we're probably going to do specifically in one case and one case only, and that is for this tank right here. Let's go ahead and get an external storage on the craft, because I think this dimensional tank here is going to be very helpful to have just available constantly at our availability. That's the word I'm looking for, availability. So back here, you know, we've got this whole mess. Oh, one other thing I did change, this reminded me, I apologize, is I put a stack limiter on our exporter. So we had the exporter exporting crops into here, but I found that it was filling everything up and leaving no room for other things. So if we ran out of sugarcane, then that last slot that was possibly filled with sugarcane was now being filled with cabbage seeds, and that made it impossible to ever put sugarcane in there again without manual intervention. So I put a interface which allows you to say, hey, I want to import items. Like if I just put these here, they're going to get imported. Say, hey, I want to stock items, or like I want to keep things in stock. So if I came in here and grabbed a piece of andesite and put a singular piece of andesite here, it's always going to keep one piece of andesite there for me. And you can see it's also going to try to fill this up with andesite. Fortunately, our filters are set up on the other end. And so what I've done here is I've said, hey, just always keep a stack of sugarcane and a stack of cabbage seeds in stock, and it will pull from that using pretty pipes. So very simple setup that I really like quite a lot. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put this guy down here, and we are going to grab that external storage and put you here. And we're going to change you from items to fluids, and you'll see it says, hey, it's 16 out of 16. In other words, that tank is completely full. So if I come up here now, we can now see our creosote oil. And if I have a bucket with me, which I don't currently have one in my grid, you know how to make them though. If I came over here and pulled out of here, it's going to take that bucket we just made and pull it out. So I think this is a very useful mechanic as far as keeping things nice and in stock. It's one of my favorites as far as that goes anyways. So yeah, just one of those things that I think is really enjoyable to have set up and have up and running in general. I don't know what to do with my crafter manager or my crafting monitor, so for now I think I'm going to just put that back in my grid system, because I really don't know how often I'm going to need that. I do like being able to keep an eye on things, but so far I haven't had any major catastrophic failures, so I don't think that's going to be particularly all that necessary. I don't know why these are off-centered. Never did manage to fix that, I guess. Anyways, so random little OCD moments aside, I do still want to get a couple other things set up to get us even more fluids. And one thing that I do see a lot, which I may have to consider here, is that oftentimes these are not used like this because it's very difficult to partition them and tell them how to function. So I may actually separate that and turn it into an individual storage block. Because the problem is if I put, like let's say I put in a whole bunch of different fluids in our system, and maybe I don't care all that much, but if I'm constantly producing a fluid, which we are about to constantly produce 3 different fluids in this episode, if those 3 fluids are always being produced, and they are never being given any break on the production, they aren't told, hey, stop producing after a certain amount of time, then our drive here may fill up and overfill. But I think it'd be actually a little bit cooler. Let me try this. I think it would be actually cooler, now that I think on it a little bit, to go through and, in fact, keep this in here and use, well, what are they called? Detectors? Yeah, use a detector to basically shut off all of our systems here that we're about to set up. I think that could be pretty cool. We'll see. So anyways, you may be wondering, well, what the heck are the 3 fluids? You keep talking about fluids, but I haven't seen any fluids yet. And yeah, really quickly I'm going to breed these guys up and cool them down a little bit. But then once I get that done, because they are causing a little bit of lag, I'll show you exactly what fluids I'm talking about, and we'll get that fluid set up and running. I think probably over here, because I have exhausted those chunks over there with a lot of different complicated structures, and I want to give those chunks over there a little bit of a break. So I might do it somewhere over here instead. You know, this gives me a great opportunity to introduce you guys something to kind of help you along in your Let's Play if you are playing along, or just in whatever you're doing in this pack, or maybe even other packs. If you ever see a pack where you've got this little mute button in your inventory, if you just click on that mute button, that's going to bring you up to the Extreme Sound Muffler main page. And what you can do is you can go through all of the sounds. Currently it is showing you sounds you've recently heard, and you can adjust their volume. So if I wanted to go to cow, and let's say I'm not sure which sound it is, I can play sounds, so you can hear very vaguely sounds that are happening. And there are a bunch of other sounds that are constantly happening. And so if I wanted to stop those, I can just hit muffle. And now I can't hear them anymore. What I tend to do, I don't mind hearing them, I just don't like hearing them as loud as they come. This is actually a slider, so you can slide this. I'm probably going to slide this around 15. Maybe even 25. And that way, all cows will be quieter. Now, here's a problem. That's all cows. Maybe I don't want all cows. And in this case, I actually don't. So what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll go to cow and I'll unmuffle. And I'll do, you see these numbers at the top. These are called anchors. So an anchor is basically a rule saying in a location near this area, disable these sounds. So we're going to click 0. We're going to hit set anchor. We're going to call this cow farm. Radius, it doesn't have to be that big. We'll do 24 and hit accept. And so now in this area, I don't want to hear cows any louder than 25% of their normal volume. And so now if I go somewhere else and I hear a cow, it'll be full volume. I'd be curious to see if I can actually find a cow that I can test that with in a reasonable amount of time. Hello? Anybody? I guess not. Okay, well, you'll just have to trust me on this one. Oh, here we go. So you hear that is a full-size, full audio cow. You can hear the footsteps at full audio. You can hear all the little ambient sounds at full audio volume. And so yeah, I think in general that is the preferred situation for audio that gets a little bit too loud. Okay, so before I get started with what I really wanted to get to today, I want to automate this guy right here. Our poor little, and I want to make sure that this setup is going somewhere. I believe it is. I believe it goes over here, or is that where it comes from? That's where it comes from. Okay, so this will go over here. Good, that works for me. So what I want to do today specifically is get this back. Thank you. Is get a little setup going for multi-servo press automation, and I also want to see about getting a couple of machines better automated. I've been noticing that our furnaces have been really slow today, and we'll do that, and then once we're done with that, we're going to get started in part 1 of 2 of getting a bunch of fluids automated. So I know we focused on fluids at the beginning of this episode, but there are a couple of things that I've got to craft that I'm really tired of crafting manually. These are some of the worst offenders in this pack for having to craft manually. So I'd personally like to avoid such a situation of ever having to do so again. So let's do that. So in order to do that, we're going to need to get a couple of redstone furnaces. And to do that, of course, we're going to need a handful of other components as well. So the redstone furnace here is going to be blast furnaces. We're going to need smokers, which are pretty straightforward. We're going to need 2 smokers, 2 furnaces, and 2 blast furnaces, and then we're going to need a bunch of scaffolding as per usual. Yep, 16 is right. We're going to need engineering blocks. Actually, I don't think we need heavies, right? Just, yep, okay. And then we're going to need some furnace heaters. I think I may already have some heaters, and I know where I have others, but yeah, I actually already have 3, and we can steal the other 3 from our setup over here. Because, unfortunately, we're going to be replacing this setup today. At least we got a lot of XP out of that. I legitimately hadn't even thought about that yet. Let's go and turn our magnet on. And let's go ahead and clean this little area up here just a little bit. That should be better. That was a lot of XP. I'm surprised. But yeah, unfortunately, our setup is prohibitive of speed, and so I'm gonna try to replace that and clean that up a little bit. It's sort of sad, but it's also just time, you know. Like, right? I forgot we added an extra layer to the top here that we will no longer need for now, at least. That compact machine has been coming in handy significantly, though. I put away the wrong thing. I still need those scaffoldings. Anyways, so the order is opposite of what I have in my hotbar. Of course it is. Let's see if we can make this a little bit easier on ourselves. And then we're going to need some machine frames. And one of the machines that we're going to be automating is the multi-servo press, but not for the reason you might think. I actually really like our large multi-mechanical press setup that we have using immersive engineering, but there are a couple of recipes that I cannot automate in that setup that I'd like to be able to automate, and so this will hopefully circumvent that using the multi-servo press. Specifically, it's the redstone, or the redstone servos, or redstone servos and the redstone flux coils. Those two are significantly the worst to come by. Right, we don't have any way to make glass right now. I should have planned that out. Whoops. Alright, there we go. Just had to cancel the craft using the crafting monitor. So I guess that is one reason to keep that guy around for sure. Not that I really had any thoughts there on removing it. I just don't know where to put it still, so it's kind of up in the air. Anyways, let's get that sheet metal that we're always going to need. Along the bottom, we're going to need our heater here, and we're going to need redstone on the left. And that's going to get us smelter 1 of 2. I am going to go for 2 smelters here because we do a lot of smelting. So let's be sure that we don't cut ourselves short here for the automation's sake, because it is definitely one of those recipes that... smelting recipes are definitely one of those where it's just sort of a pain to get anything done with. Right, you do need a machine frame in the center. And that's number 2. So I already have the resonant integral components for that. And the only thing that I'm missing is I'd like to get the speed upgrades for these as well. Should already have a couple of crafters laying around. I do, in fact. And we already have crafting recipes. We just have to get them out of here. Right? Yep, that's the one. We're looking for cable. Just like that. There we go. Don't think we need the redstone blocks anymore. And we will need more of those. I think that's safe to say. And now we can start to set this up. So let's see, we're 1 block further in. Should also have a framed block here for you. Grab a piece of glowstone dust to make that a lit block. And it looks like we may have accidentally caused a disconnect here, but I think I might be able to rewire that a little better. Because I think now we should be able to just go straight across. I don't see why not. Just like that. Should be a little bit more convenient. So, with that significant convenience ahead of us, we should now be able to fill in a lot of this space that we had previously unfilled, just because I didn't want to cause any crampage. Put down our machines, so we're going to do a redstone furnace here, and a multi-servo press here. What did I do over here? Pipes for the outputs? Yeah, that would make a lot more sense. If I remember, yep, okay, good, I do remember. Where was the dimensional storage for this setup? Over here? I am actually not certain. Give me just a minute to figure out where I put that. Right, I was using entangled blocks to do that. Well, we don't need those anymore. Thank goodness I keep my old episodes up, because I was able to figure that out pretty quickly. So, don't know why I wouldn't have kept them up, but still, you get the point. So now we're going to do the same setup that we've been doing, because it's really been working well for us with having the pipe on one side and our crafters on the other. These are all powered up, and we're going to put crafters behind. They are going to require a cable connection, so I might do that. Let's do it there, right in the center. I think that would actually be the most satisfying and also the most logical. We will do pipes across the top. Set you to output and push-pull, output, push-pull, output. Now, answer me this, because I don't actually know the answer to this. If I give you sand and I told you to output to the top, you don't care. Okay. Honestly, that's fine. So let's grab some extraction module Mark IIIs. Upgrade those, of course, to the top tier. And have everything come out of there and go into our main system. Beautiful, delightful. So now all of these machines will know exactly which ones are, or all of our crafters will know exactly which ones are responsible, because they are pretty cut and dry here. So I'm very glad to see that. All right, so now we can divvy up our smelting responsibilities. I'm definitely going to say that these two can probably go together, and these two can go together, just like that. I think that's pretty fine. Let's grab my pipe wrench. That would be in here. Let's cover these up, like so. Do that, and so now we are good to go. Now, the biggest thing that I want to teach, the thing that I've been kind of dying for here, are the thermal expansion components. So these guys here, I really want to teach you, because you don't know how to make them. You know how to make everything here. Why did I go to this? I wanted to go to this. So this guy here is pretty much the biggest thing that I want to automate. So we're going to teach you how to make those and how to go from that to that, because you already know those components. And so now if I came over to the crafter manager and we go to the multi-servo press, we can see that. As you can imagine, it would probably be easier if we had 2 sets of multi-servo presses, but that's perfectly fine for me. And then we're also going to want the servo. So if we do this recipe here, you already know those components, and then go from that to that, which you already know those components, I should now be able to convince you to do servo crafting for me, which would be very nice. So now let me test that out by asking for a servo. Actually, let's do the coils. And let's be sure to turn off the magnet. Why are you not... Are you not cooperating? You know how to work, right? No, all of a sudden you don't. Well, that's weird. Okay, that was just, I guess, funky behavior? I don't know. Strange. Anyways, there we go. So that is, it's crafting them, looks like one at a time, I'm hoping. Or did I only request one? Let's request, I thought I requested 3, but I may be mistaken. Anyway, since one recipe here is a predecessor of another, it's not going to be able to craft those until this one is done. So I think that is pretty much ideal. And so that's going to get us our coils. I'm just going to plop this down here to make sure. Yeah, we are still waiting on something. Did I steal? Oh, I stole the aluminum wire on accident. Okay, that would explain why it stopped. I knew I needed to turn my magnet off, and I just didn't get to it in time, I suppose. Anyways, we can cover these back up. I don't know why the extraction was acting strange, but honestly, not that big of a deal. Just little things, you know? Little things. Anyways, that should... Yep, you're resolved. Good, good. That should do it for auto crafting for the moment. Smelting factory we'll need to rename or unrename, but that's not really that big of a deal. So yeah, honestly, I think we are doing pretty well here for automation. And the reason that I wanted to get all these things automated is because, let me grab one more of these. I know it sounds weird that I'm constantly crafting these, but the reason I am is because I want to be able to auto craft these guys right here, because they are not fun. I don't think they're fun, but they're also regularly needed, so it's kind of a pain in the tuchus to do, and I'd love to be able to not have to do that anymore. So let's just go and toss these down here and get the, let's see, flux. There we go. Let's ask for 9 of these. And that's going to make our machinery as fast as possible over here to match up with our fast as heck machinery on the other side. And I don't have to worry about power consumption anymore because we are obviously doing just fine. So yeah, heck yeah. Now, all of this also has a reason. I wanted to make those just to kind of help our crafting interrupts and stuff. But if we look at the arboreal extractor, this is what we're going to be trying to get ready for today. So I'm going to make a auto crafting recipe for that because we will be using these pretty regularly throughout the series. Let's actually subtract or substitute you for birch, because that is something we still have a lot of, even if we're not auto farming it. Right, gotta do that. So we will come down here and say, hey, hi, hello, I'd like to teach you how to autocraft these guys, because we're going to need a lot of them. We're going to need like 12 arboreal extractors. So let's go ahead and get those auto-crafting as well, because that's going to take some time and a lot of resources. That's way, way faster. And then if we look at thermal, I should now have 9 of these. That's outstanding. Very hard to compare to something that fast. And this is just chugging along. Perfect. So now I no longer have to worry about, can I fit these in my inventory and making sure that these can be automated in any sense. It does not matter anymore. So let's look at that arboreal extractor status. Looks like we are doing too dang well for our own good. So the arboreal extractor is going to allow us to extract fluids out of a tree. Arboreal tree extractor. Extract. I think you get that part just fine. So these guys are really, really handy because we can use that to extract a lot of different tree fluids. For example, if we grew ourselves a jungle tree can produce ourselves latex. That might sound a little familiar, and that's because it's very, very important. Latex is what we're going to use to do a couple of things. Not only industrial foregoing, which is our next stage of technology, which is not where I'm trying to get to at the moment. What I really want to get to is this guy. Nope. Where is it? Where is it at? This guy right here. Plastic sheets. Plastic sheets from Pneumatic Craft. These are the same plastic sheets we've been seeing everywhere else. They can also be crafted with further processed rubber, basically processing it until it becomes a durable plastic. So this process here is going to be a big deal. It's going to use more machinery that we haven't really gotten to yet. But for this episode, I specifically just want to get and store a ton of latex. Because if we're storing it constantly, then we could also use that for auto crafting in later stages of the game. Or, just next episode really doesn't matter too much. And yeah, we could use the fluid extractor. Those of you who are familiar with modded would know this. But the fluid extractor is, of course, going to be gated behind this process. And I like this process better anyways, because it doesn't remove, I guess, the logs. It's just sort of, it's sustainable and a little bit more easily automated. So getting into that, let's take a look at the different kinds of trees that we can use here. So the number one thing that I want, obviously, is a jungle tree because I want latex. But I also want resin, and the most resinous tree in this list here is spruce. So we're going to grow a spruce tree for resin, and resin can be used for a couple of things. Mainly can be used to make tree oil out of, and I'm probably going to use this just to make for compression dynamos to make more flux, because at this point I just want to try out a couple of different kinds of flux and not just focus on one or two for the series and forget about it for the rest of the series like I did with Enigmatica's setup using mechanism. I want to constantly explore new means of producing flux, and so we're going to be doing that with at least one or two compression dynamos from resin once we get there. The last thing that I want, and I don't know why I want it, is sap. Sap's not really particularly useful. Syrup does not really do all that much, but it is just here, and it is one of those things that it comes from a tree, and I think it'd be fun to store. So I'll probably keep a very low supply of that stored up and running and available for us at any point. And so I think that could be particularly very fun as well. So let us go ahead and get the saplings that we need for those. If you'll remember, the sap came from dark oak, which is going to be kind of an annoyance. So maybe we do skip sap for now that I think of it. And we just focus on a singular or a few spruce trees, maybe 2 spruce trees or 2 and 1. I think that makes a little more sense. Let's go ahead and grab some bone meal. And we don't need power for these arboreal extractors. That is one of the best parts of the setup here, is that these just work without any needs for a setup too terribly complicated. I am going to grab a couple dozen tanks. And while that processes up, we can go ahead and get the rest of this set up. So there is a reason that I made 12 arboreal extractors, and that is the fact that a tree has, or at least one log on its own will have about 4 sides. And so we can use that to our advantage here. I'm going to clear out some of this. I'm getting really tired of the otters. I've had to clear them out a couple of times, and they come back and bite you if you hurt one of their friends, which makes sense. I like that mechanic. But they keep on spawning. They don't spawn once. They just constantly spawn, which I find particularly annoying. Anyways, if I put down our arboreal extractors on the bases of this log or of this tree here, you will see that it says it's empty and it says it's not doing anything. But if you give them some time, they will realize what's going on. And you can sort of see right now that they are just frozen. But there is a texture on the top, and you can see now they are starting to fill up with latex. Aha, there we go. So that is our latex production already, I wouldn't say handled, but already started. I don't know how I'm going to set these up all together. I do think that maybe having another one here would be fine. And we can do, once again, latex here. That top texture, I believe, starts to animate once it gets filled. No, it's always animating, I think. Boy, is it hard to tell if it's animating. Yeah, it is. There we go. And then it moves. Okay, interesting. So yeah, these do seem to have a bit of a startup time that they require. And then I guess behind it, hopefully this guy here doesn't hate me too much for growing this tree. Aha. These are not evenly spaced. I see. Maybe we make this bigger. We do a slightly bigger setup here. And I do know that we're going to run into at least one major annoyance here, which is, of course, going to be Podzol. Maybe. They do tend to like a lot of space, don't they? There we go. Okay, well, the Podzol explosion wasn't that terrible. This guy's just smelling out that hive big time. However, this is the worst possible tree we could have gotten for this. So let us put you in Tree Miner. Ah. HT's tree chop has somehow changed, and now it's being annoying, and I hate this. There we go. That is a proper tree. I had to go through and quickly bind, if we look at chop. I just toggled chopping to the H key because the mod is HT's tree chop. Anyways, if I put these down, we should start to see that they are going to want to take resin. And so that will be a little bit faster. Put you out of vein mining mode. And I'm just going to clean this up a tiny bit here. Filling in the corners and whatnot, because that is obviously pretty important. I actually don't know why I did that in that order when I could have just done this. There we go. Much better. So that is sort of the setup that I have in mind. I'm probably going to overgrow this a lot because this looks just kind of a little strange being 3 trees all growing together here. But we can see that our latex production is already working out pretty nicely for us here. And our resin production is also in progress. So what I'm going to do is get rid of all these spruce leaves because we don't need them. And I'm going to call it an episode there. In between episodes, I'm probably going to decorate this up a little bit, kind of overgrow it slightly, and start to get some infrastructure put together for this. But the biggest thing that I want to do next episode is get fluids pulled out of these. And there are a couple of different ways that I can do that, but I think it's going to be somewhat of an annoyingly expensive process one way or another, unless I use a couple of different mod choices that I have. And I'm thinking of using a mod that I haven't used yet called XNet. And that might require a power line being run over here, but it might also require a slightly different distraction for that. So I will have to make that decision first and then come back to that sooner than later. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you very soon.